Hello everyone, I'm Beastly Eel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Acolyte. So this is episode 3 of the Acolyte, and it takes place into the past, specifically I believe 16 years into the past, and we finally find out the question we've been asking since we saw the very first 2 episodes. Although it didn't answer every question, it did answer a lot. So our main idea here is the fact of what happened 16 years ago on that planet. And why does Mai want to kill those 4 Jedi? And for the most part, we got that answer, give or take. But let's discuss. One of the big things here is apparently the twin sisters were part of a witches cult, which could be very like an off-site of the Night Sisters, like a branch that was removed from a planet because the Republic didn't like it, whatever it may be. And so we have that, right? And they're really trying to focus on these girls learning their abilities. And apparently they were created by the mother inside of another mother, right? Although we don't know how they were created, I would imagine they were using some sort of force ability to create the 2 children. So because of that, they were born as twins. And these twins are very opposite of each other. And this is very apparent when they are children. And although it's shown as adults, when you're an adult and you're completely different from your sibling, it's normally due to your experiences and your, well, your just experiences in general and how you deal with them. When you're a kid, you normally are very similar to your sibling for the most part, to a certain degree. I mean, obviously there are various stipulations and stuff like that. Like personalities are obviously different. But what I'm getting at is like normally they want to do the same thing, they try to do the same thing on a majority basis. Not all the time, I do get that there's outliers. But the point I'm making is they were created in a very different way than most children are made. So because of that, they're acting slightly different. To the point where Mai really wants to use her force abilities and connect to the force and everything else, where Osha really wants to explore the world. And these two are very contradicting of each other because for one to do one, the other can't do the other, right? Or so their thought process is. And because of that, Osha is the one that doesn't want to be a part of the family. She doesn't want to be a witch. She doesn't want to have the ascension. And the ascension seems like it's their process to be connected to the force fully, is what I'm assuming it is, based on what we see. So we have this whole thing, and while they're having this interaction, the 2 sisters in the woods and everything else, they're ordered by their mother who gave birth to them, to go back to the fortress. When they're going back, we actually see Soul, a younger version of Soul, obviously, um, like pop his head out to see him. So he and the Jedi supposedly, I would imagine, have been watching them for some time. So they leave to go back inside, and their other mother, looks just like them, like very similar to them, right? And she is obviously the leader of the cult, leader of the witches' coven, whatever you want to call it, right? And she's really trying to get these girls to feel what they want to feel and make their own decisions. Even though she knows what's best for the coven, she wants what's best for each girl. And for this to work out, she needs them to be not necessarily together, although that ideally she would love that they are together, right? But for whatever the reason, they were created, right? And I'll talk about my thoughts on how they were created and why they're the way they are later, and why they were two. Um, so we have all this, right? And they're talking about the ascension and everything else. And Osha doesn't want to. Osha doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be a part of the ascension. And she stated how she wants to be a Jedi. And although most of the sisters, right, and especially the other mother, um, Mother Cora, Coral. I kept hearing Coral, and I didn't know if that was just because of the way her head looked, and I feel bad saying it that way. But anyway, she was very against this, saying that no, then you must stay with the sisters, we must be a united front and everything else, and that we shall not have the Jedi interfere. While the other mother was basically stating how they need to make their own choices. We're not going to force them into it because it's not going to work. And I think that was a very key piece here where it's like she really wants them to have their own experiences because for them to appreciate their coven, which is how I'm interpreting it, they need to explore. They need to want other things, but also realize what they have, right? So, because of all this, she doesn't like the idea of her being a Jedi for sure. However, she's not telling her flat out no. She says she has to discuss it and everything else. So, during the ascension, the sisters have Mai completes the ascension. Osha does not because the Jedi interfere. Apparently, the Jedi have made it there, and we see all four Jedi. So we see the Wookiee, we see the woman from the beginning, we see Saul, and we see a much younger of the Master, for sure. The one that drank the poison, which I find very interesting because it makes sense that he would be a Padawan, but it's just very interesting, right? So they explain that they can't be teaching the Force to younglings or to children, and that it's frowned upon, and that the Wookiee and Saul basically try to convince that the two children come out. The children come out, and they explain that the Jedi explain that they have to have um, a test done to see if they are Jedi worthy to be trained as Jedi. And although Mother Coral does not want this to happen, the other mother says, "Fine, I will have my sisters bring scouting sisters bring our daughters to for your test and on the next day or whatever." So this is where the mother pretty much explains to Osha that she's going to talk to the council and everything else to see what's going on with the decision of her being a Jedi. So the sisters basically say that they have to do the test, but they don't have to pass it. So the mother goes up to the two of them and explains to them that she wants them to fail the test. So first, Osha and Mai before the test basically talk to each other, saying how they're going to promise that they're going to be truthful. I mean, tell lies. Sorry. So they do all that, right? And during that process, Mai goes first, and she comes out, right? And during this time, Osha kind of has an interaction with the Wookiee, not really talking, but I feel like they understand each other. So when Osha goes in, she is taking the test and she's stating what she sees on the screen that um, Soul is looking at, and she's getting it wrong, right? We know that she's getting it wrong, and Soul goes and tells her, "Oh no, you excellent, you're right." And then she goes, I know that's not a mount," and then she stops because she realizes that she needs to keep up the lie, and that's when Soul's like, "Why why are you lying? Like, did somebody tell you to lie?" And that's when she explains what's going on. And he's like, "Well, what do you want?" And she goes, "I want to be a Jedi." And he goes, "Okay." And then that's when um, the female Jedi basically states that we need to complete the test. Now, we don't know how the rest of the test goes, although we assume she passes, right? So she then goes back to her sister. Her sister knows right away that her sister told the truth, and she was not happy about it whatsoever. And Mai is very furious. So when Osha and Mai get back, Mai attacks Osha because she's mad that she is basically abandoning her and the family. And that's when the mother has to order Mai to be removed. And she asks Osha, "What do you want to do?" And Osha's like, "I want to be a Jedi." She was okay. I'll talk with the sisters to see how this is plausible. And she's like, "But I might not see you ever again." And the mother goes, "Probably so." She goes, "But don't let fear dictate your actions. You write your own destiny. Make sure you choose the one you want most, right?" And I think this is very interesting to kind of have this interaction. Well, Osha's packing up her stuff in her room. Mai's not happy. She starts to burn the place down. Quite literally, actually. So Osha opens up a door, gets herself out, blah, blah, blah. There's a moment where there is Like apparently the whole building goes up pretty easily, which I have my thoughts on later, and we'll discuss that later. But there's a point where there's a lot of destruction, and they're each on like a platform type thing, that used to be connected, but now they're not, right? And they're kind of bent. And during this, Mai falls, right? Soul tries to stop her with the Force, is unable to do so. Osha then falls. He then jumps, grabs her because he realizes either his Force is not working well enough or whatever it may be. He then pulls Osha up. So during all this, they explain that, um, Mai kind of caused this whole fire. But once we get to um, where the rest of the sisters were, they're all dead, and there's only fire around them, not like on them. You know what I'm saying? So then Soul takes her out. She passes out. Apparently, she wakes up. Soul and the rest of the Jedi are there, and he explains what happened and that Mai is most likely dead. Actually, he says she's dead because he saw her fall to what looked like her death, and that everyone was dead. And Mai wanted to go back. I mean, Osha wanted to go back, and they said that couldn't happen. Now, that not the end of the episode. The end of the episode was when we see Mai in front of the tree that they were in front of at the beginning, and she was unharmed and did not have any burns on her. And that was the end of the episode. So some things to unpack here. Okay. One of the big things here is I want to talk about is that the Jedi must have killed the witches. The reason why I say that is because at the end of the episode, we see the Padawan with what looks like scarring around his eye, which was not there at the beginning of the episode. Although we do not get a close up of it, that is what it looks like, right? Which means there was a fight of some sort, which means, I guess, that the Jedi actually caused the destruction of those sisters. Now, which would explain why the Padawan, who was later a master, took the poison to begin with, mostly due to the fact that he regretted the decisions that were made there. The other thing here, they must be the Night Sisters. I'm very positive on my assumption on that one. I'm like 99% sure I'm correct. So because of that, I believe that the Night Sisters are them. I also think that the sister created those two children from the Force. Okay? She created them from the Force. And because of that, the Force is a balance, right? It's a balancing act. You can use it for the good and for the evil or bad, however you want to phrase it, right? So because of that, there were two children created, which would mean that one child was more on the good or light side of the Force, while the other is on the dark side of the Force. Now, my assumption would have been light would have been Osha, dark would have been Mai. And I believe I'm correct on that. However, personality wise, opposite is how I'm looking at it. Because, but at the same time, it's weird because Mai was okay with killing Osha. So it's kind of like a weird thing, but it's looking more now that they're adults that they're not as dichotomized as they were when they were children. Is more of what I'm kind of guessing at. And that's why I believe they were twins instead of just the single child, right? Because I would imagine that they wanted just the one child, and unfortunately, because of the Force, two were created. And I just find it interesting to really figure out what's going on because I have a feeling now that knowing that they're set witches, that Osha was using the Force in a very different way than the Jedi, and that was why she was probably thought that it would not be best to be there. Obviously, she chose at the end, but overall, somebody else was, trying to lean towards the fact of that maybe being a Jedi was not for her. Overall, great episode. We got a backstory that I would thought we were going to be. Well, put it this way, I knew we were getting this backstory. I thought it was going to be much later into the series. The fact that it was early on really helps us paint a picture, although it did not give us everything, because it did leave some unanswered questions, but it gave us enough to kind of figure out the dynamic between the sisters um, right before the Jedi got involved, right? So we have all that going on. We then have the fact of seeing that the Jedi might not be as good as we always perceive them to be, right? Causing destruction and killing all the Night Sisters, potentially. We also have the thought that there might be Night Sisters. I keep saying it that way because we don't know for a fact. However, I'm pretty positive I'm right. But overall, I love where this series is going, and I'm very curious where it's going to go now that they've introduced this piece as well. But that being said, let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you not? And why? And as always, if you like the content you see, please make sure to like and subscribe down below. Other than that, this is going to be Beastly Eel signing out. Have a great night.